Oregon kind of gets left out just because, man, it's really hard to get 49-3 out of your mind when you see a couple of these scenarios coming up against each other. What is up, everybody? It is Jake with Master of Football, back at it again. Happy Monday. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to be updated on all things EA college football and watch plenty of college football content, subscribe to this channel right now. I also do plenty of Madden and pro football content. Anything related to football, just click on that red subscribe button. You will not be disappointed. Remember, please click it. Click it right now. And the like button too. Okay, it helps out the channel a lot. Subs too. It doesn't cost you anything. All it's going to cost you is being updated on everything EA college football and plenty of college football content as well. Like I said, like, share, comment, subscribe. Without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, guys, here we are. We are chugging along. Another great weekend of college football coming up. We're starting to see some playoff picture stuff kind of come to fruition. Let's check and see on this last week of football to see what kind of happened. Boom, here we are on ESPN.com, the college football scoreboard. So in the ranked matchup, so Ohio gave a little bit of a scare at the beginning. But then Ohio State came out, won by a bazillion. Tennessee won by a ton of, they were up 65, 58-14 going into the fourth quarter. So that game was kind of done there. Clemson, late survival against Syracuse. Bama dominates Mississippi State. LSU stuns Ole Miss. TCU survives Kansas State at home. We also see Texas came out here, and a lot of incomplete passes by my boy Quinn Ewers, but Oklahoma State wins this game. And then we see the fact that Tulane keeps on chugging along, keeps on winning. But I want to talk about this game right here, UCLA versus Oregon, top 10 matchup in the Pac-12. A lot of people say, oh, Pac-12's down, Pac-12's down. Not this year. They've actually been playing pretty good, and Oregon has too. So UCLA entered the day number 9 overall in the country, number 6-0, and then Oregon was 6-1, number 10 in the country, and they put it on them, man. They came out here and had a really, really successful game plan. I mean, I know they gave up 14 points in the fourth quarter, but for the most part, got an onside kick. Bo Nix was 26 incomplete passes, 5 touchdowns. They also had 260 rushing on the ground. Really, really stunned UCLA, and now Oregon right now is the front runner in the Pac-12. I know that USC just lost. They lost by 1 point on the road. It was a crazy game. There's a lot of questionable calls at the end there, kind of both ways. There's a weird timing thing that happened with USC against Utah. But Oregon right now, at the beginning of the season, they did not see themselves being in this spot, but man, they are currently tops of the league. We look at the schedule here, and again, you see the fact they ripped off 6 consecutive wins against number 9 UCLA, at Arizona, Stanford, Washington State, beat BYU, and Eastern Washington had that tough 49-3 week 1 in the Georgia Dome against Georgia. Look at the rest of the season. They play Cal, who's struggling, Colorado, who's struggling. Washington is a tough out. Utah is a tough out, and Oregon State's going to that's no slouch either, man. They can run the ball, and they really, they're just a team that they're never going to be out of games per se, but, Oregon in the recent years has, definitely been able to put it on Oregon State. Although, I'm telling you, Oregon State, watch out for that team. But, man, 6-0, and they are currently, like I said, they're doing really good in the Pac-12. Now, the big crux of my video here is I want to bring up this game right here. So, for week 1, I'm telling you, the Chick-fil-A kickoff game, Oregon comes out and plays Georgia and absolutely just gets boat raced. Lost by 46 points, gave up 21 points in the second quarter, 14 points in the third quarter, 7-0 at the beginning of the first quarter. So just, man, Bo Nix was 0-4 career against Georgia. Stetson Bennett, they had a combined 440 passing and 3 touchdowns, 132 rushing and 4 rushing touchdowns. Man, they just absolutely got annihilated. And like I said, that's what I wanted to talk about in this video, because I'm having a hard time seeing Oregon make it to the playoff. If there's only 4 teams being invited, I'm having a hard time seeing them invited, just because I know you feel so bad, because if they hypothetically were to win out, they would go 11-0 or 11-1, and then 12-1, more than likely beating USC or beating Utah again or something like that in the conference championship game. But man, I'm really putting it together, and because of how the way things are stacking up, I just don't see it right now. I'm going to show you a document here that kind of highlights out all of the possible scenarios and where I think Oregon kind of gets left out, just because, man, it's really hard to get 49-3 out of your mind when you see a couple of these scenarios coming up against each other. So here we are. I have my gets in over Oregon to the playoff, and I have how Oregon does get in scenario. So for gets in over Oregon to the playoff, we have a couple of these that, like I said, the 100% lock area. Any undefeated P5 conference champion is going to get in over them. If Clemson goes undefeated, if Georgia goes undefeated, if Ohio State or Michigan goes undefeated, if TCU goes undefeated, it's not a question. They're getting in over them. Now, I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. It could happen. But I do think that I wanted to build this into the situation so we could look at all the possible scenarios. So any undefeated P5 team gets in, no question, not even a debate. Any one-loss SEC Big Ten champ. So most likely Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, Alabama, or Tennessee. So all of them are still in the running for that. Now Ohio State would have to lose, a random game to Penn State. Michigan would have to lose a game to Michigan State or something like that. Now, depending on how bad the loss, that could, add some gusto to the Oregon's case. But for the most part, I think either way, I think that's going to happen there. So if you think about it, any undefeated Power 5 conference champion is going to get in over them. Any one-loss SEC or Big Ten champ is going to get in over them, in my personal opinion. We talk about the probably scenario. So any one-loss P5 conference champ, so more than likely TCU, Oklahoma State, Clemson. So Clemson, they come out, they have actually a tougher game than you would think. South Carolina. So that's going to be South Carolina. They will play them late in the season. So if they were to come out and lose that game, I think they would still probably get in over Oregon. Oklahoma State only has currently a 3-point loss to TCU. TCU, this is hypothetically, they lose a game to, Texas later on the season, something like that. But I think that all of those teams more than likely would get in just because they don't have a 49-3 loss on their docket. Any one-loss Big Ten SEC conference champ game loser. So if we think about this is probably going to come from the East side because I don't see a 2-loss team from the SEC conference championship game getting in over Oregon. So you see the fact that would be Georgia. Maybe Georgia comes out and Georgia, loses the game and they lose to Alabama, so they go 12-1. Tennessee comes out, they lose to Alabama again, they go 12, or they already beat them. They lose to them on the rematch. They go 12-1. I think they would also get in because at that point, one of those teams would either be Georgia and have one loss and be in the conference championship game, or they would have beaten Georgia and had one loss and been in the conference championship game. So I think they would probably get in over Oregon as well. This one over here, like I said, a one-loss Georgia not invited to the conference championship game. So let's just say Tennessee, goes ahead and runs the table, or they do really well. They lose to Kentucky, a random game like that, but they beat Georgia. I think that an 11-1 Georgia that does not get invited to the SEC championship game because of a loss to Tennessee would get into the playoff, or at least would be higher seeded than Oregon would be, in my personal opinion. Then there's the debatable category. So a debatable category would be a one-loss Big Ten or SEC team not invited to the conference championship game. I already mentioned Georgia. So Georgia probably would get in, but a debatable one would be like Michigan. Michigan goes 11-1. They don't go to the conference championship game. They would probably get in over Oregon. And then Tennessee, same thing. They come out, they lose to Georgia. They go 7-1 in conference. Georgia goes 7-1 in conference. Georgia goes to the conference championship game. Tennessee does not. They're 11-1, not conference championships, not even an attendee. That's a debatable one. Now, they get blown out by Georgia, then, there's a scenario there. But for the most part, like I said, 100% lock, probably debatable. There's a lot of muck in here for it. Think about that. I think it would be a 12-1 Oregon team. And I know I rail against East Coast bias, but man, that would be just a nightmare scenario. But there's a couple things here that I think would help them if they wanted to get in. One of those would be SEC and Big 12 chaos. That would be Alabama loses to Ole Miss randomly. They go 6-2. Ole Miss loses a couple other games. They went out there. They win the conference championship game. Alabama is 10-2, 11-2, winning the conference championship game. That would be something like that. Tennessee beats Alabama. Tennessee beats Alabama. Tennessee beats Georgia. Tennessee loses to Kentucky. There'll be lots of things like that. You need as much chaos in the SEC. Also the Big 12, because a one-loss Big 12 team that doesn't have that 49-3 loss on their docket, granted it is week 1, but they don't have that loss on their docket you really need that to happen. You also need Clemson to lose 2 games, because a one-loss Clemson team is going to get in over them. Even if they lose to, South Carolina, they lose to South Carolina by a couple touchdowns, maybe like 3 points or something like that. I think their defense is good enough to keep them in most games. But their schedule is just pretty soft, so you really need Clemson to lose 2 games. You need Ohio State or Michigan to lose 2 games. basically you just need, whoever is the second team in the Big Ten East Conference or division to not be a player in the conference or in the playoff picture. I think whoever is, if there's a one-loss Big Ten team, it's not a question they're getting into the playoff. And then a P5 champ that has one or horrendous loss late. So like I said, TCU comes out, they just randomly play Texas and they lose by 40 or something like that, but then they win the conference championship game. They're 12-1. Oregon's 12-1. Their loss was week 1. TCU's loss was in November. There's a couple things like that you might have a case there, but you really need a lot to happen here that I don't necessarily see happen, which is why I wanted to put this thing together because, man, Oregon looks like they're doing a really, really good job, but that one game very, very early, it's going to be so hard for the College Football Playoff Committee to overlook that game. Am I being too harsh? Again, I'm a Boise State fan. Everybody gets mad at me, oh my gosh. But I'm just going to say I have a hard time seeing a scenario where Oregon, if they go 12-1, and they need a lot of magic right now just because, man, 49-3, that's 46-point loss. It's really tough to justify a 6 touchdown loser in a game to be like, oh, they should play for the national championship. So I don't know. I just don't necessarily see it. But again, I might be wrong. If you disagree with me, or even if you agree with me, get in the comments right now and let me know. Do you agree? Do you not agree? Like I said, get in the comments, let me know. But that's it for me for today, guys. I will see you guys tomorrow. I am out.